So welcome to another War Game Review from thePlayers8.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at a brand new game from Compass Games called 2040, and I'm going to say it correctly this time, An American Insurgency.
I always want to say An American Abyss because I think initially that's what it was called.
And I think on the unboxing I originally had put the title or something as American
Sure.
Insurrection.
Or something, yeah.
And then someone corrected me, thank you, and then I corrected it. But then I can never remember which one I corrected it to or from. And so I always say the wrong one regardless.
Got
it. We got it right because I had to read it.
Yeah.
So, the designer of this two-player card-driven game...
Edward Castronova.
And I believe this is his first design.
Yeah, definitely his first design.
And I think he lives just up the road from us.
He's a professor.
So, this is a two-player, head-to-head, card-driven game about a theoretical American insurgency in 2040. There's a few different scenarios with there's two scenarios with two different types of insurrections in it. And it's like a area control kind of game. And I say that because
Yeah.
you think about something like Labyrinth. The control of areas isn't based on dudes on a map kind of way, mostly. You're trying to...
It's based on the status.
Yeah.
Which is similar to the stability and the governance. I can't remember what they're called.
Yeah.
So very similar concept there.
It's about winning the opinions of the people to your side of the rebellion or not.
Yeah, the insurgencies are trying to get it to revolt. All these areas and cities to revolt, whereas the federals, or the government, is trying to get them to order.
Order, yes. And so, yes...
And trample on our rights.
Sure. So you have pieces, and they are either federal agents, or they are militia, and you have a dudes on a map element of control to it, but it's less important than, like in a coin game, where some people might win from control.
Right.
But you need those pieces, and you might need a lot more than the other player to do some of your operations.
Yeah.
So this is a card-driven game. You have a hand of cards. There are events, and there are ops, and the cards are aligned for either you, your opponent, or neutral. And much like Labyrinth or Twilight Struggle, if you've played that, when you play a card that has an opponent's event in it, that will go off. Mm-hmm. So you have that aspect of angst and card management and damage mitigation and trying to...
Which is always, I think, the right choice in card-driven games. There are some card-driven games that do not do that.
Yes.
I have always believed that's the right choice. Now, saying something like the right choice isn't probably the way to say it.
Yeah.
But it does create that layer of angst and anxiety about managing your hand to manage ultimately the damage that you're going to self-inflict by playing those cards.
What I would say is that mechanic fits in much better with certain games. And I think Topic is one of those. Yeah. In a game like this, where you're supposed to be like an insurgent faction trying to like do all of this stuff, or you're the government trying to like put out all the fires, that extra level of angst and not being able to do everything you want to makes total sense.
Yeah.
Whereas like in some games, it's like that would just cause too much chaos.
Right.
But yeah, it's all that's. I like that exercise when we play games. That
Always,
for
I always enjoy it because you ultimately look at your heart, and in this game you're going to you start with 9, and ultimately you can get as low as 7.
7, yeah.
We never got below 8, I don't think.
No.
But you look at those cards dealt to you. You're very quickly assessing the condition and state of the board, and then deciding, okay, this one, while this is Alexander's event in my hand, it can't go off because the conditions aren't met.
Yeah, or it's not too terrible if it does.
This one isn't that bad. So it's a matter of, I always try to prioritize the ones that conditions aren't met because I don't want you to do something that then makes the conditions met.
Yes.
So you play those first, then you might play the ones that are less painful, or you might play a really painful one to accept the punch in the face so that you can
then I got 8 more cards
respond.
to fix it.
Yeah, so I just do like that, and I'm glad that Edward chose to make that the way this game works.
And much like Twilight Struggle, you have a space race track, but in this one it's the social media track. It functions very differently, but
Yeah.
you can toss away one really bad opponent's event into that to do that thing.
And make that event not go off, but also get a benefit.
Yeah, which is,
Yeah.
it's always nice that you have that little reprieve of like,
Oh, yeah. Because once again, you kind of, okay, I'm going to put them like this, and this. My fourth card, I'm going to play as the social media because I want to get rid of that really
like I
crappy card.
really can't afford for that to go off.
Yeah.
Social media track.
And some of them are really bad. I mean, I had to play one for you that ultimately really hurt me at one point of the game, uncovered all my militia in 2 different spaces, and then what did you do?
I moved
You
in,
moved down and
killed
you
them,
crushed them all.
and
ultimately,
remove bases,
Yep.
which hurts your funding and victory points.
and I was trying desperately to switch, I think it was Los Angeles,
Yep.
over to Revolt, and you just crushed that. It just wasn't going to, and that's okay. That's the way the game works.
Yes, and much like that was something that I felt was quite similar to a coin game,
Mm-hmm.
was that like, if the government gets you, they get you. You're done.
Yeah,
It's over. And whereas the insurgent faction, when they do their attacks, it's like flip a bunch of your guys over,
roll some dice,
and then
and you
there's
might
luck
remove-
in it, and you
yeah.
might, you know,
Now there's ways to mitigate that luck.
Yeah.
The more guys you have,
the
and
more
the
dice you roll.
higher ops card you use to initiate the attack, I think was.
I think ops
what you-
is
it
areas, but
it
it's
was
the
the
control,
status.
the control factor. Yeah, that's,
Yeah, so where you attack, and so there's ways to mitigate that, but ultimately sometimes you're like, okay, like I took out 1 or 2 of your guys plus a base, I had 5 or 6 guys, I rolled well, and bam, did what I needed to do. So before we go any further, I want to talk about the theme of this game,
sure.
right? I'm just going to hit it head on,
Yep.
because I think the designer, and I can appreciate what he was trying to do, but I think he tried to avoid offending anyone in any way, shape, or form, and ultimately didn't say much with the way the game is.
Yes. And I feel a bit more strongly about this than you do.
I agreed.
I felt like this had been watered down to a point at which it was themeless.
Yeah. See, and I agreed that it had been watered down, but I'm not sure it was themeless, but not as thematic as it probably could have been.
Because you'd take it, and it's, you know, it's funny. I think about, this is probably going to come up a few more times in this video. I think about a game like Labyrinth, which is one of the most polarizing games out there.
You either love it or hate it, typically.
Because of the theme.
Because of the subject. Yep.
And sometimes you just got to eat it. Sometimes
Yeah.
you got to say,
I'm playing the jihadist.
you know, Volko Ruhnke said, okay, what if we just pretend that, like, the thesis of the global war on terror was, like, 100% right and everything was fine, and, like, what does that play out like?
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact that, like, you know, his personal beliefs might not feed into that, but what he created was an incredible game, and the theme of it is very intense.
Yeah.
And, like, some people will, like, not touch it with a 10-foot barge pole.
Sure.
You're probably going to, like, lose sales for that. But, like, who cares? Because he owned that, and it's really good. And this one, it was like, we took a step back, we kind of watered down some of the stuff that's in it, and then we said, we're going to do it in, like, 20 years' time, so that we can kind of
So that
do
no
some other
one,
bits and pieces.
yeah,
Yeah, and it was
that
just
no one
like,
directly associates this with what is going on in our current political environment
which
in the United
might
States.
upset people. And
sure.
that's a very valid thing to do, but
You know
also,
what?
like,
If it upsets you,
you just don't buy it.
well, give me a break. Just
It's-
move on. You know, go play something else.
It's a board game.
Yeah, go play something else. I've got Unicorn Glitter Luck on my shelf at home. If that's what you want, I'll give it to you, right? This is a game that it's trying to do something. I'm not sure it really
but that's
says
just it.
much.
I don't know if it is anymore. To me, this was just like, let's make an Insurgency style two-player
Right.
board game that happens to be in the U.S.
Set in a near
geographic
future.
area.
Yeah.
And the near future bit is what gets me.
Okay.
Because there was like, there's cool little cards that's like, ooh,
Nanobots.
and like
AI, what was it?
Yeah.
AI doctors
like
or something.
There's elements of sci-fi. I'm like, okay, make it 30-40 and make this a sci-fi game.
See, I think
And
that
then-
would have went I think that would have went out of what it was at least trying to do.
But I don't know what it's trying to do, though.
Okay.
I don't think it's
The red and the blue don't really tip it off for you?
Because
Okay.
in the other scenario, the colors are the same, even though
No, I get it.
the factions are switched.
I get it.
Like, it doesn't...
So we played the rural scenario where the insurgent was the red,
Yes.
and the feds were the blue.
Yeah.
And then the other scenario, it's an urban where the blue is the
No, the blue is still the feds.
still okay.
It's just that the reds are in different areas.
Okay, so it
They're
totally
like
ignored that.
coast-
I guess I didn't realize that about that.
Yeah. And, like, it saves on components, which is great, but also, like...
But did it really? It was
The-
one counter sheet.
Yeah,
Come on.
so, like, the colors become meaningless in that scenario.
Yeah.
Like, the colors are meaningless, so then, like, why did you pick them in the first place?
Yeah.
You know.
But what I would say about the theme and what the game is trying to say, as I was reading my cards, and in my mind, you know how I try to play these games. I always have quips and comments, and jokes is a bad word, but there are tropes that you're always going to hear when you're playing Red Dawn or
Yeah.
Wolverines, blah blah. You know, you're going to have that in these kind of games. I found myself somewhat being immersed in that because of the way the cards, they do address certain issues, they just whitewash it or keep it very basic.
And maybe that's an insurgent thing. I feel like the federal ones were very just like,
okay,
send in the agents. That's a
Well,
lot of what it was.
yeah,
And, like, not in any meaningful way.
right.
But I also think that, I do think that government factions in a lot of games that are like this often feel that way. Where you're like, I'm a machine doing the stuff.
I never like playing the government, just to be honest. I mean, I really don't. Only because it's typically
It's too much like work.
Well, it's like yeah. I work in town management, but it's kind of boring and systematic, and you've got all these forces, and you're just moving out and killing, moving out and destroying this, moving out and telling people what to do, and I don't know. It's just not for me.
Yeah, some games do it really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But it was the one thing that I was like, yeah, I don't know. It was fine.
Well, I don't know if I addressed what we wanted to address because we had some offline discussions. Yeah, I think we're trying to be a little bit hesitant because I don't want to start a World War III.
I'm not trying to like dog on the designer as well because he put together a game.
Yeah, he worked hard on this.
Functions and like he's beloved everything. That's totally fine.
Yeah. It functions, but my gosh, the rules are horrific. And what I mean by that is you got this very simple player aid, very, very simple.
Very basic.
Right? Very basic. And here's an example of unrest, right? And it says specifically unrest greater than or equal to the CF, and I'm trying to
Which is the control factor.
control factor of the territory. And then you go to the frickin' rule book.
And the rulebook says if the number of unrest
Greater
markers
than.
exceeds.
Yeah.
And exceeds is emboldened.
Yeah,
so it's definitely supposed to be paid
So
attention to.
how in the world did that get put in there and not make it onto this? Because I should be able to play the game
So
generally with this.
a total contradiction.
Yep.
That we then kind of had to figure out from the components and
What are they trying? What is
there?
Yep.
That like, okay, we decided this one was right, but then in the rebel players recruit action,
Oh yeah.
there's
No mention of bases
no.
in any way, shape, or form. And part of my victory conditions is my number of bases.
Yeah,
So
you can build them in the recruit action, but if you look at the play aid,
it doesn't mention
it doesn't mention it at all.
That seems like an important part that should have been mentioned.
And it's not like there isn't a few lines of space.
Oh
that
my
they could have
gosh.
fit it in.
They could have fit. I mean, you got tons of space on yours, and I've got at least. Yes. So to me, what was I'm trying to say that I think this game, had it been better proofed,
Yes.
better coordinated between the different elements, I think it would have been more enjoyable to play. Now,
Yeah.
we've made it.
I agree with that. Yeah.
We've made it through some of those things. I've made some little edits on my. I wrote on this, right? This is my game. I'll write on it.
How many times did we read the net ops?
Oh my gosh! And
Like,
and net ops is a concept that is extremely important for the insurgent.
and I think I understand it,
I believe I understand it.
but I'm not 100% sure.
Well, and also
Looks it up every time.
I will say this: we read it 2 or 3 different places in the rule book and here, and we almost gleaned different highlighted aspects that were like, okay, well, this is maybe what they were meaning to say. And then finally, we got it, and we're like, okay, that could have used a comma, there to help me. City regions, city, comma, regions, comma, and suburbs.
Yeah.
That would have solved our problem. Now, that's a simple thing.
That was one of the things.
But that was a big thing. So let me go back to what is NetOps. So NetOps is a very interesting concept that forces the insurgent player to worry about a thing called rebellion power. They have a rebellion power track at the bottom of the board. I actually think it's one of the cooler parts of the game.
Yes.
Very cool.
And it was frustratingly behind that barrier.
Frustratingly difficult to understand. And I also think they missed an opportunity. I'll talk a little bit about that. But you play an ops value on a card to take an action. Move, attack, recruit, whatever. I play a 3-value ops card. You don't have a lot of those, by the way. I add on to that where the rebellion power track is. Mm-hmm. You don't care about it other than to keep it low to hurt me.
Yes.
So you're never going to be that interested in driving it down a ton. You're going to drive it down here and there a little bit because you add that to your ops value. So if you have 3 ops plus you're on the 2, all of a sudden you have 5 net ops or what is it called again?
Yeah, net ops.
Yeah, net ops. So then if you look at all the different actions, they explain, okay, net ops works like this. So you figured that out. Congratulations. Now you've got choices. You've got random rolls that you have to pay for, by the way.
Yep.
And then you have to choose a couple of different options. I can choose to roll all of those and I get one choice, right?
No,
I get to put all, yes. See, I'm still, after playing for 3 hours.
Your choices are, you either roll all of those dice. So I've got 5 net ops. You're going to roll a d20 5 times.
Pay $5.
And pay $5 and do that thing in those 5 spaces.
And you're going to put out markers that say, okay, I can recruit here, or I can put unrest here.
And if you're Grant, you'll roll the same ones every time.
How many times did I roll?
Every time.
Like Texas twice and Phoenix twice
Texas
and
twice,
Chicago.
twice.
And I'm rolling and I'm like, this is a D20, man. This is a D20. There's 20 different examples and I'm rolling 13s and 14s every turn.
Nuts.
But you then roll those and then you get to choose one of those spaces.
No. So if you're doing it randomly,
you're right.
You do it for all of them.
See, I still can't get it right.
If you have the social media edge, which is another track.
Yes. Which is also a cool thing.
You can choose to do your net ops -1, so you went from 5 to 4.
Yeah.
You're still going to roll randomly. You're going to roll 4 random areas, and of those 4 random areas, you're going to choose 1.
1 if you don't have the...
No, if you have the edge.
Right.
There was
I still can't get
there
it.
was a momentum card
It's right
that
here.
allowed you to choose 2.
You're right.
You had not played that.
And I had not played that, and that was a bad mistake of mine. That was early on in the game. I should have held on to that.
But
so
I also
continue.
Yeah.
Continue.
So like, I believe
we believe
that
that's
that
the
is
way
correct.
it works.
If it is not, please say so in the comments. But it is. We've read this so many times because they have select and choose and all these different terminologies.
Yeah.
And it just could have been better defined.
Well, and I also think as I look at the pictured examples that they gave, it was like move and attack. Probably the 2 simplest actions. They should have done a pictured diagram of how to place these things out by choosing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that's another missed opportunity.
But like,
I just feel like that's a missed opportunity.
This discussion that we've just had in the last 4 minutes
went on for 3 hours.
We would have it every time you would try to do
every
this.
time.
It's like, okay, is it this?
Because it's not clear. It's just not clear. It should have been done very differently, which is frustrating, right? We played this. I could feel there's something here, but it's kind of buried underneath some of this confusion.
There are parts of this game that are really good.
Yeah.
There are parts of this game that I really, really enjoyed. And there are parts of this game that were things that are like, that I'm like, oh, it clicked. So there's this whole news cycle, and the news cycle is this little like river of rebellion power versus the viral nature of news stories, and we're both trying to affect that because that is how your rebellion power can get really strong.
And I'm trying to affect that to get really strong. You're trying to affect it to just keep me down.
I'm trying to bury the stories.
Yeah.
So the way that plays into the Rebellion power track. Really cool. Really like that. Then there's this social media track where the track itself is interesting in its little layout.
Very unique.
So like you're trying to keep it kind of on your end of the scale so that I can deny him the opportunity to choose, and all of his territories and locations are random.
Yep.
And then you're trying to swing it to yourself to get those bonuses and then keep it on the A spot, so I have to go really
You have to
long way
move
to
it
get it back
multiple
to me.
times to, yeah.
But then so then we're taking these social media actions both to affect that track, so it can kind of swing to one of us or the other.
Yep.
But then there's also a sub menu based on the ops that you played into the social media track of things that you can do, some of which affects the news cycle. So I'm doing this, I'm getting a benefit from the social media track, and then I'm going to parlay that into like real news because we're going to direct the chatter towards this other story and forget that one. We're going to delete this story. We're going to cycle the news. The interplay between those little things were really neat.
Yeah, it was very well done.
I enjoyed those aspects of it.
I believe the opportunity missed there, and you may disagree with me, and that's okay. Those kind of tracks that are pendulums going back and forth, in my opinion, you've got to put a benefit for both players, not just a negative. Meaning, you shouldn't only be worried about that to keep me down. You should also be worried about that to gain an advantage.
Yeah, I gained nothing from either of those.
You would
I prevented you from having good things.
You would sink cards into that just to keep me from getting an extra whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I felt like that could have been maybe honed a little bit more, but that's my opinion, right?
Like some of the, and that was the other part of it that we had talked about, is that there's this hack action. You can
that's
send
pretty
out
cool.
your army of hackers, and if you succeed at that, there's a whole menu of benefits that you can choose. You had done a couple of hacks at the beginning of the game, but it didn't affect the Rebellion power track that much.
Well, it would have had I started, because I stopped at 2, because you then threw 2 shields down.
And it kind of just nullified it.
It nullified it, because I would have had to have done multiple successes to get those out.
And there was more important, obviously more important stuff to do on the board.
But if I got one more hack on that, man, all of a sudden I was moving up 3 spots. Then the next one would have been 4. It would have really changed the game.
But I feel like those are so watered down with the strength of the news stories.
Agreed.
So like there could have been something really good there, but I felt like
it needed a little
it
something
just
else.
Like we kind of ignored it for the rest of the game because it kind of just got locked out.
Yeah.
Which was like...
And that's a shame. I don't think any part of that should ever...
But again, if there had been... when it's in like the 0 spot, I get an extra $2 during funding.
That's what I'm saying.
Make
it beneficial for you.
Incentivize me to do more on that. Because I put up my couple shields and I'm like, didn't hack again for the rest of the game.
Like I think of a game like we've played recently, the British way. Some of the tracks there, like if you had it at the top, you had all your forces, right? So maybe if the social media wars really focused on the rebel winning it, maybe you don't have as many recruits.
It like locks out 4 of your people.
You don't have as many guys, and then all of a sudden you can't. Then you're going to start paying attention to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it was missed. So I look at a game like the British way, where they really baked into it an alternative incentive to really futz around with it. Really, I kind of got it up near the top, and you ignored it the rest of the time. Or you threw a couple shields down, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to waste my time.
Threw a couple shields, so no one's hacking each other back and forth.
Right.
And maybe I would have done in a different game where I didn't have like the cheap actions that had got my momentums, and I needed more money. Like I would be hacking you for money.
Well, that is the cool thing. That one of the hacking benefits is you can steal 2d6 resources.
Yeah.
So that's going to take resources from your opponent and get you resources. I think I would have used that more.
But in the game that we
I had enough money, really.
I got that like dark web shipment, and then you did a really good couple of the fundraising. It was like
I got like $20
we
in
were
one
never
time.
that starved for resources, honestly.
That's probably a fine-tuning thing. I think working on the balance of some of those things to make it, once again, incentivize people to focus on that.
Yeah.
The other thing I really enjoyed is the map. I think does not look good. I don't believe it's a great map, right? The way it's laid out, the way it looks. But I did enjoy the concept of the status And the difference between that and the population value, those kind of things, that's very coin-esque,
Yes.
right? When you control a large city, you're going to get 8 or like Saigon in Fire in the Lake is worth 12. If you control that and it's in 2 times support, you got 12. That's huge, right? Here they kind of have that. There's no multiplier, but if I control that, or it's it's in revolt, that's worth 3 points to me, and it takes 3 points from you because it started typically at order. I really like that. I thought that was well done. I thought that made me as an insurgent establish myself in the regions first and then just start whittling away at the cities. And I enjoyed that. I thought to myself, that's exactly the way an insurgency like that would go. They would win the hearts and minds of the rural folk, and then they would start moving into the cities.
And you try and get ones where you can.
Yep,
Be opportunistic about it.
And just get good ones. I didn't care about like Big Sky and even Denver, worth 1.
Well, you already start with Denver.
Well, yeah. But I mean, New York, 3, Atlanta. I mean, some of these cities are big. Well, Atlanta's not, but
yeah, Los Angeles and New York.
Yeah, and Chicago. Well, Chicago's 1, which I was surprised by. That was one thing.
But something I did appreciate is that the suburbs are worth a lot.
Yes, they are.
And I thought that
they're worth 3 at least, 2.
I don't know. I felt like none of the cards cared about the suburbs. Or maybe that's just the
Not
ones.
as much.
And I was like, the concept of those is neat, especially for travel,
Yeah.
because you have to go through the suburbs to get to the city. And
Well,
that's
and they
dangerous.
and they have bypasses around all the cities, so you don't have to go into cities. You can go around them.
But
I thought that
but
was
then
neat.
control of the suburbs is really important.
It is.
For travel purposes,
Yep.
as well as there's a lot of population in those. That was a neat aspect of it too.
But I did like the focus of that and the way they actually divided out the regions. Now, some people are going to argue, well, we talked Appalachia. That's not really Appalachia, but it's close.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I know I'm an American, but I just think there's some really neat elements on the board that I thought worked really well, and then some others that didn't.
Yeah, I would have preferred to have the what do they call it? Like the cleanup phase written down somewhere.
Sure.
Because there's a
Maybe
couple
on the
steps
board
to that.
or-
Yeah, you had space on like the news cycle display you could have put it, or there's plenty of corners of the board it could have gone.
Yeah.
But it said you got to reference the rules for that. Also, when you test areas, that's in the rulebook. It's not anywhere else. Like just print that on the air. Now it's a D6 and
Sure.
it's a 50-50 of either it becomes a 1 or
One,
a 2.
yep.
But like, so I memorized that very quickly. But I don't know, put it on the board.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to.
I always like that test roll, like in Labyrinth, or because you're like, oh, I can basically get a country for nothing.
I will say that I think that in this one it is less punitive. I feel like in Labyrinth, because you can roll a 3, and it can immediately go to the opponent's victory points.
Got it.
You can only get a 1 or a 2, so you have to do work everywhere.
Yeah.
I feel like in Labyrinth you can die to those test rolls.
No, it's
which is
true.
like, ugh. So I actually like that here because
if
it was
I'm-
less like, oh, I just
Less
lost to
punitive.
test
Yeah.
rolls. That's not fun.
Yeah, and once you do it, there's only 4 or 5 of them that don't have. I think
there was probably,
mostly the suburbs out in the
I think
western
there was like
states.
5 or 6 in this particular scenario.
Yeah.
But that, in Labyrinth, you have to it's a lot to go and test areas.
Yeah.
Because you have to go and do ops there, and that's an investment. So I guess that's the reward is you might actually get a 3 area there, but here it's like, okay, they don't like me very much. Let me go and tidy it up.
sure.
It's not quite as terrible and game ending.
The other part I really liked was the unrest. I fought really hard to put unrest, and you ultimately have to get more unrest than its control factor to then bump it up 1 level. So when it's at anger, you have to have 2 unrest there and take an unrest action to then flip that up to a 2, which is, what was the 2 called? Defiance. And then do the same thing and get 3 to go to revolt. I enjoyed doing that.
We know that because in the rulebook it says that.
Yeah,
on the play
not on the play aid,
that.
But I liked doing that. I actually enjoyed playing the Insurgency here. I felt like I had a lot to do.
Did you feel like you were doing Insurgency type things?
I did.
That's important to me.
And I feel
like I'm doing it.
Yeah, I felt the futility as well. There were times where I moved guys down there and I'm like, okay, I know he's going to come get me. And sure enough, you had all this money and you were like, I'm rolling down the interstate and I'm just going to crush you. And it's like, great. I actually really liked the way insurgents had to roll the dice, whereas you, as the government, just took people out.
It's just money.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my actions are very expensive, and it's just money.
Yeah,
No die rolls.
I was actually okay with that. I think overall, I enjoyed the game. There's just a lot of work here.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I'd recommend it. But
Let me show you how it works, and we'll
come
wrap
back,
up with a few final thoughts.
I jumped the gun.
So here's a look at the map. Well, so geographic map of the contiguous continental USA, or whatever they call it. What you can't see off map is this is the news cycle display. There's like a pool of stories that are kind of on the bubble, and then there's the current active stories. This acts like a river or a market from a lot of other games. This will be discarded at the end of the turn. These move down, and one of these with the highest viral rating, or the virality, as they put in the rulebook, will move down. That's important because it's going to be this one has the highest value here, and it's going to contribute this number, along with these ones, to the current rebellion power track. So note that this is a little cycle and an aspect that you can affect in the game. It's off map on this little card. So I'm going to talk about that. We'll try to bring that in and reference that when we do that. So the actual game itself is something of the core mechanics are quite a traditional card-driven style. You're going to have a hand of cards, and the cards have an ops value, or they have an event on them. And then this is one of those games where you have an insurgent colored card, which is red. You have a federal colored card, which is blue, and a neutral ones, which are gray. And we've talked about, or like, I don't know, this is called an insurgency, and there's a lot of buzz around coin at the moment. But if we're going to draw a parallel to this, it is much, much more like Labyrinth. If you played Labyrinth, a lot of the stuff in here is going to feel very familiar to you. And like Labyrinth, this is one of those games where if I, as the blue federal player, play a red insurgent card, I'm going to do the ops, and the event is going to trigger for my opponent. So it's one of those games of card angst in your hand and trying to manage your hand, right? So like Twilight Struggle is that way as well, where it's mitigating a lot of bad stuff and then trying to make it up with the good stuff. And you might think, oh, I've got a terrible hand. Well, guess what? Your opponent's going to have one at some point too. So it's one of those games. You can see there's no artwork on these. It's just a kind of an explanation of the event with like a title, or you can spend the ops value for it. What I would also note is that there's a couple different scenarios in this, and that's what you're going to see here. So we have this hashtag resistance. Oh, that shouldn't be in this game. Whoops, I forgot to remove that. That shouldn't be in this particular scenario, because there's two scenarios in the box. The colors red and blue, I know, might stand for things that you might think that they do, but they don't in this game. Blue is just a color for the federal player, and the federal player is just whoever controls the government at that time, or whoever's kind of like the ruling party, so to speak. And red is always the insurgent faction. And there's two scenarios. There is an urban insurgency, so it's where a lot of the cities and coastal areas and suburbs, those are the insurgent faction against the federal government, against a blue federal player. Or, and when you're playing that, you're going to use the hashtag resistance, because you're trying to resist the government. Or, you're going to play the rural insurgency, which is what we had done in this particular game, and that's where the starting setup is the rural kind of areas. So I'm gonna I hate saying that word here in a few seconds after I've said it so many times. They are going against the government as opposed to it being based in like cities and suburbs quite so much, and so and that's basically divided up. Well, obviously now I'm not going to be able to find any. Now I'm trying to do it. So those ones have a hashtag Patriot on those cards. So in this one, you remove the resistance ones. In the other scenario, you would remove the Patriot ones and keep the resistance ones in. So the card deck, whilst it is like 90 odd cards, it might even be more than that. It will you're going to remove like 7 or 8 for each different scenario, and that might not make a huge difference. It might not sound like it does, but it makes enough of a difference. So that's just, you're going to see some of these cards and some of that notation. Those little hashtags don't actually do anything for the social media track, even though they look like they might. That is just scenario differentiation, that's all. So, what are we trying to do in this game? Well, you have a menu of actions, which might also look like a coin game, but also it looks like Labyrinth. So you're going to play your card for either the event, in which case you're going to do exactly what it says on the board, and those are going to be rule-breaking things like moving guys where they couldn't normally move, or adding lots of different things that you couldn't normally do, or you're going to spend your ops to take your rebel operations or some general operations. Now, general operations is moving your reserves up, again, you'll recognize that from Labyrinth, or you're going to try to affect the social media track, which is this little thing down here. This is going to move one way or the other in your favor or against, and then you're going to spend those ops within these social media things, which will affect the news cycle, which again we talked about was off map, or you might move this an extra space, or it might convert a guy, so a guy who was an agent or was a militia, they might convert based on what they read on social media. Or you might enrage people, where people who were angry might go to, well, no, I don't have one, they might go to defiance. Or they might be pacified. It's still it's still called the enrage action, but it's just people who were defiant go back to angry only. And the goal of this game is to have population under order or population under revolt, plus the number of bases that you have out, and that is gonna so it's the same thing. It's either end of the spectrum, the order and revolt spectrum. That's the extremes of it. You're trying to get that population. So this is 3 in rural Texas. There's 3 in the Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston suburbs, and there's 2 in Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston. So you're trying to get your population to your kind of extreme end of the revolt or order spectrum, plus any number of bases. That's how you're going to win. If you get to 35, you're going to win. Or at the end of the game, whoever's got the most is going to win. Generally speaking, this game is going to have 5 full turns. There isn't a turn track, because it's just based on if you ever can't deal the number of cards into hand as there is left. But we played through it, and it is very unlikely that you would ever have more than 5. I think they might technically be able to do 6, but you would both be like down here, which limits how many cards you have. I still don't think it's possible. So your menu of actions includes things like fundraising to get more money, or to recruit guys, to put guys onto the board, or to sow unrest for the rebel player. And unrest, if you put unrest out, unrest is going to tick over, and people are going to go from order to angry to defiant to revolt. So you're trying to put those out and overcome their current level. So if we have 2 unrest there, this is going to flip over, well, it's going to flip to a 2 to a defiant. And then those are going to go away. Then I have to build up, and once I get 3 in here, this is going to flip over to a 3. So that unrest is trying to build that, and you're putting that out all over the board to do that. Move guys, you're literally going to truck guys along interstates and move them in and around. For the rebel player, it can be quite dangerous to move on the road. If you ever move through spaces that have blue agents in them, one of the people that you're moving is arrested, and they're just removed from the board. So if you're moving 3 guys and you're going through a couple of different states that have federal agents in them, you're not going to have many guys left by the end of it. You can attack guys. It's very asymmetric. That is quite coin-like. In this one, you're going to flip all your guys active, and you're going to roll dice. And you're going to roll dice, and you're trying to hit the target, your control factor or less. So on a 3 or less, you succeed. Hey, we've got 2 3 or lesses. We're going to kill 2 agents. But then these are now exposed. Before they were on their sleeper cell side, where they cannot be attacked. We killed 2 guys, great. But now the federal player is going to truck guys in, and they're just going to wipe them, right? Because the federal player, when they do an attack, they don't roll. They just pay. They're going to pay money, and they're just going to remove guys equal to the number of agents that they have. So they're going to pay money, and they're up for attacking, or it's called hunting. It's the same op. You pay a certain amount of money to flip them over, and then on a separate action, you're going to pay to remove guys. And the cost is $1 plus the target area's control factor. So here I would pay $4. 1 plus 3 is 4, and I'm going to remove 1, 2, 3 guys. Great, we got them all. Hey, we took a couple losses, but hey, we removed them all by trucking more guys in. So the insurgent faction is rolling dice, but if you have a bunch of guys in here, you don't have a bunch of guys out there because you have very limited counters. The government player is a bit more heavy-handed. It's much more sure that they're going to wipe people, but it costs them a lot more money. And money's very tight in this game. There's all sorts of different nefarious things that you can do. You can try to hack your opponent. There's this little track down here. This is the Rebellion Power track that is funded by the rebellion values on the news cycle. But also, it's fueled by how much hacking you've done. You can see we've got a couple of counters down here. I got a couple of shields because Grant hacked me a few times, and that moves the rebellion power up. It straps you for cash. Every time you successfully hack, you put a hacked marker out. That moves this up 1 space in the track. And then you can choose one of these outcomes. Well, one of these outcomes is to steal 2d6 funding from an opponent. And when you roll 2d6, you can roll real freaking well. You're going to steal 10. So the federal player goes down 10, and the insurgent faction goes up 10. And in a game where your maximum is 30, that is a massive, massive swing. And if you can, as in any other game, starve your opponent of resources, it's going to swing pretty hard because the other player's not going to be able to react. But one of the things in this game, so generally speaking, the federal players looking to play cards, and the ops, generally speaking, need to match or exceed the order value for you to be able to do it there. So you need your big strong cards to affect big strong areas. Your weak cards can target weaker areas or areas that are more aligned with you. The kind of odd part about this is that the insurgent faction has much less control over where they take their actions. So they have something called net ops, and net ops is a function of the ops that you play plus your rebellion power. So let's say they choose a 2 and they have a 2 to do an unrest action. So then there's like this other kind of subdivision within the flow chart. If they control social media, if they have the social media edge, they can be more targeted in where they do things. I think that's kind of the thesis of what they're saying, that social media has an influence on people, and if you're doing well in social media, you can control what happens. Whereas if your opponent, if the federal side has the social media edge, you're going to roll very randomly on these tables to see where the stuff happens. You don't have the control over it, which is it's very interesting. So let's say I was trying to do an unrest action. I've got 2 plus the 2 that I played is 4. I don't have the edge, so I'm literally going to roll a d20 4 times. And I'm going to choose to either roll in regions, I'm going to choose to roll in cities, or I'm going to choose to roll in suburbs. So there's regions, which are, let me get all these out of the way. Regions are the large areas, right? So plains is a 3. A suburb is this kind of grey box that surrounds a city. This is a suburb, and these yellow ones are the cities. And so you're going to choose, okay, I'm going to roll for 4 regions to place unrest. They wouldn't because they control them all, but we'll just say that. Well, here, we'll roll in 4 suburbs, because that would actually be useful. So I'm literally going to roll a d20, and I rolled a 2, and I'm going to consult my suburb table, the suburb of Los Angeles. So there aren't any like pawns in this game, like they were included in coin games. So we just marked them because we wanted to do it all in order. You could just resolve it here, but so we rolled a 2, we rolled a 10. And a 10 is Chicago, so we've got suburbs of Chicago. We're going to roll a 17. 17 is New York, so suburbs of New York. and then we're going to roll another 10, so we went to Chicago suburbs once again. And then you're going to... So, because we don't have the social media edge, we're going to pay for all those spaces, and we're going to do it in all those spaces. So we're going to pay lots of money, which isn't great. 1, 2, 3, 4. Even though we doubled down here, we're going to do it twice there, is also my understanding from the rules. And then we're going to place unrest. So this is a defiance. Okay, that's important. So we're going to place unrest in all of those places where we can. So we're going to place one more unrest into the LA suburbs. So that goes to a 2. Here, let me leave that out. We're going to place 2 into Chicago. And then because the suburbs of New York have order, we don't place any. It's too strong to do such a random action against it, basically. However, what we then do is we check to see if our unrest exceeds our current control factor. 2 does not exceed 2, so nothing happens there. 2 does not exceed 2, so nothing happens there. And we don't do anything here because there's no unrest. However, it is possible that unrest had been placed there from some event or some other thing that had happened, and even though we can't place unrest into this with the unrest action, if there were unrest there from something else, this would then flip to a 1. So there's all these kind of 0 spaces of control in the scenario that we played. The insurgent faction either needs to go and do their surge action, which is like literally move guys in and flip this over, which is very expensive and hard to do, or like rely on events to put those kinds of thing out, or some other way to get those. So getting into places that have orders can be quite challenging for the rebel player. But that's how that kind of stuff is done, and the rebel player is desperately trying to do that again and again and again, because, yeah, we didn't flip anywhere, but we built them up to these 2s. Next time we take an unrest action, hopefully we roll well on our D20, and then we can place it again here. Well, this will go to a 3, which will exceed this. This will go to a 3. Maybe we can do it here as well, and this will go to a 3, and this will flip to a 3. All of a sudden, I just picked up 6 revolt population. So my revolt marker up on the very top of this track that I think that you can see, and you might not be able to, I'm going to gain 6 victory points from that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's massive. That is huge. And that is also very difficult to take away. But I, as the federal player, for example, can see that happening. And I'm going to try to, like, charge on in here before that happens. And I'm going to try to kill that guy. And then I'm going to try to pacify the area to remove the unrest. And then I'm going to try to secure the area, which is going to, reduce this. It was at a 2. Hey, we're going to reduce it down to a 1. Oof. Now, that's all different actions. All of that costs cards and ops and turns, but more importantly, that costs a lot of money to do all of that. I was very lucky in that I had a momentum card that sticks out for a long time that meant my secure only costs 2, and my pacify only costs 1 per 2 spaces. So there are these momentum cards. They function just like momentum cards in coin games, and they just stick around and give you bonuses. Some of them are extremely strong like that, because conserving resources is very important in this game. But honestly, you go back and forth, play all of your cards. You can ditch a card into the space race, the social media track. Functions very similarly in that way. But you have to play everything. You're going to be playing events for your opponents. You're going to be playing events for yourself. You play neutral events. And then you're going to do it all again. You can do it, generally speaking, you're going to do it for 5 rounds if no one wins. You can auto-win with 35 points. But generally speaking, you're probably going to go the whole time, unless you get absolutely ruffle-stomped, which could happen. And that's how the game works. What we'll do is we'll wrap up here with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the map. You may also have seen me use a couple of different components, which this game does not come with.
Yeah.
We used some of my little orange cubes to mark out all the different areas that the insurgent was working in.
because when you're rolling 4 or 5 20-sided dice and then consulting these tables,
we'd mark them all out
we
and
would
then
mark
resolve
them,
them all.
and then I'd make the choice, or we would resolve,
Yeah, so-
depending on which option I chose.
You know, you don't have the little white and the black pawns like you would get in a coin game. You got to supply your own.
Which that actually kind of made me mad a little
Also,
bit.
they give you 1d6 in this game, and the insurgent player rolls like
3 to 7.
kind of a bucket of dice.
Yeah, it's
so you're gonna have to
very
supply more
frustrating.
dice or roll 1 die 7 times.
And we added red and blue dice. We had red and blue dice, so that was
Which
good.
is funny because I didn't need the blue dice because the federal faction never uses
rolled.
them. So you just a couple more dice, and then we use a little red and a blue cube to track the population.
That was either at revolt for me or at order for you.
Because having to recount all of the different bases and stuff all
Was
the time,
annoying.
there wasn't a counter for just the population. Because I can see how many bases I've got left.
Yeah.
So I know how many bases I've got out.
Yep.
But I want to track my population separately just so I'm making sure that as things change in the game state,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I've got this much population and I've
Yeah,
got this many more bases.
I'm really glad we did that because I think that helped me visualize what was going on a lot better.
And it saved a lot of time having to recount stuff all the
yeah.
time. Which we do all the time in coin
Yep.
games. That's a nightmare.
The only other comment I would make about the components is the federals are supposed to have 6 bases.
Yes.
On the back of the rule book, it has a,
I wanna do this.
here it is, right here. It shows the counter sheet on one side and the opposite side.
So it's 3 bases here and 3 bases
There are
here.
6 blue bases.
Yeah.
I clipped this game, I unboxed this game. This game only came with 3 bases for the blue.
Yes.
It came with 9 for me. That's great.
Also, the rulebook says that the federal player is supposed to have 9 bases,
Right, it's
but
supposed to
that's
have
a hard limit.
6, yeah.
But on the counter sheet, there's only 6.
Yeah, so
So figure that out.
And actually I want to look at the unboxing video again because I know I didn't lose any pieces. I'm not sure where those bases went. See, and there are a ton. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, I don't.
This is
that
wrong.
old?
This is
Who
actually
knows?
wrong.
Who knows?
But that's an example of what we're talking. This game needed a little more care.
Well, yeah,
A little more care and attention, I think, would have made way more playable, way more enjoyable, and probably would help it reach a broader audience. I think, unfortunately, the way it is, it's gonna
yeah. I think they
be hard for some
attempted
people.
to reach a broader audience, and in doing
By
so,
watering
have
it down.
ultimately made it
yeah,
not appeal to anyone.
sure.
It's tough.
I actually enjoyed the game,
Yeah.
and I think it was because I was playing the Insurgents, which I think were very interesting.
What I was doing
Not politically, just what I was doing was interesting.
when we could do the rules, what I was doing was totally fine.
Yeah.
Good CDG mechanics, doing all
Yeah.
this stuff. There's nothing wrong with any of that. I really liked. I felt like I had a lot of momentum cards. I don't
Yes.
know if you had a lot.
No, I think I had the same
Okay.
amount. I just kept passing them up.
I felt like I was putting those out, and those were providing me with
Huge advantage.
significant, long-lasting
There's two
benefits.
more
I had
for
a
you.
couple early in my first hand, and that felt like it did feel very juggernaut federal
Oh my
type.
gosh.
So I'm like, cool.
And a couple of those for you.
A couple of those were so really cheap, secure, and pacify ops. Anytime the militias move, they're going to flip over.
That was brutal.
Whenever I take a deploy action, I get 4 extra guys. I mean,
There's a momentum that's
I'm just
great.
like, I felt like I was rolling with those
Well,
benefits.
You know, there I had 2. There might be a couple in there.
No.
Okay. So it looks like I had 2.
It looks like I might have had 6 that I could have done, and I had
Yeah.
3 of them. Like, some of them were really good.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
Well, and the momentum are like capabilities in coin games.
Yes. And
There's
it-
something that sticks around and benefits you the whole
that
game.
was something that it feels
Wow, I really
very
didn't have many of
coin
those
in
at
that
all.
way. Hey, I get my little cheap ops here, or my ops can do something extra good here.
Yeah.
That felt like I was doing, you know, very federal stuff.
And actually, looking at these 2, I passed this one up because I had no idea what. This was very early.
Yeah, it was.
That's the one where I would have been able to choose 2 spaces.
Oh,
rather than
yeah,
one.
yeah,
That
yeah.
would have significantly changed the game for me.
Yes.
This one also reduces your revenue.
Oh, to max of 20. isn't
So
it?
to a max of 20 means the highest you can have is 8 cards.
Yeah, I'll never have
That
9
is a
cards.
huge difference if I can keep my resources high. Then I have 1 more card on you. And frankly, if I had you at 20 max, you would have been down in the sevens sometimes, 7 cards.
Regularly, I would have
And
been.
that's why I'm saying these two, analytics and cryptocurrency, I should have played both these. But that was learning the game and the system. Now this open borders was really good as well. And I swear there was one more gray one. There's some more cards. There's some more red cards.
Yes.
But
Not a lot of red, though.
I like the momentums. But your momentums were really good.
I have one. You have
You probably have triple what I had.
Robotics
3.
agents. Tireless domestic. Pacify requires 1 agent, not control. Secure
geez.
can target 2 spaces, not 1.
Yeah, that's
Like, that is unbelievably
Pretty
strong.
brutal.
Especially if I pair that with my Supreme Court making it cheap for me to do that. Then I'm just like whack-a-mole machine
Sure.
over here.
But that to me, these insurgency, government versus somebody, they need those kind of things because players should be forced to make those choices. Do I use the 3 ops to do something I really want to do, or do I play that down as a momentum? Because that takes half your turn,
Yes.
right? It's a big investment. But
Yes.
that significant outcome. I'm not sure mine were that great. They were good, but
But
Anyway.
my ones I'm like, oh yeah,
yeah.
very much, especially early in the game. It's
Yeah.
like,
And ultimately, my insurgents were winning, I think, by 5 or 6 points. And we had 2 more turns to go. And we kind of stopped because we had made so many bad mistakes and had, I think, not understood everything about the game. But I think the game's fairly bad. I think both of us could have won. We were both on the verge of having big swings.
yes.
I had a couple cities that were going to start flipping and not a bunch.
I
but
was down in the dumps here, but
you came back.
I think I took East Coast off of you, and I
Yep.
gained back. I think it was New York,
Yeah.
and so that's like a massive swing of points.
Yep.
So there's a lot of that can happen. Because I was thinking as we were playing early in the game, I'm like, how are you gonna hit the 35 points? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's tough.
I think you were close to like 28, 29 points at one point.
Because
I'm like,
35
that's
is an
not bad.
auto victory.
Yeah, and I thought that's quite difficult. I'm like,
Yeah, it would be very difficult to do that. I think this game, maybe it needs a second edition with some rules updating, clarification, some more components like these kind of things, and I think it would become a better game. I think it's enjoyable. I enjoyed playing it and doing what we did.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it up to the others out there to decide what it says or if it says anything. I'm not going to get embroiled in that discussion. I took it as
he tried to make it so that it didn't, because he didn't
No,
want it to
I
be
get
that,
it.
and I don't think
Yeah.
it does.
yeah.
But I think
But I don't know. I'm not sure I would recommend this game to anybody.
I would recommend that if you want an experience like this, you should play Labyrinth,
Yeah, right.
because it's some very similar concepts, although
Yeah.
it plays out quite differently, and it's that's a theme that isn't for everyone. But
Yep.
yeah, and you don't agree with me on this, but I'm like, hey man, change this 2 to a 3 and give me a sci-fi game, like, and you're onto something.
But 1,000, I mean, you have no connection then at all to it.
No,
Period.
But like, I also don't have any connection to this
Well-
because they took all the theme out of it.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
where I'm like, so give me something.
Right.
Don't
Right.
give me nothing.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
But yes, so
But
2040.
I did enjoy playing it. I
Yeah.
will say that.
What we did once
Yeah.
you can get through the rules.
Yeah.
Which
It's not
is
perfect.
10 pages of rules.
Yeah, it's not.
So like you can learn it, but like
well, maybe it needed to be 15 pages of rules
no,
with some better.
it needed to be like 8 pages of rules.
Yeah, with more clarifications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if this is something that you're interested in, take a punt on it, go for it. I mean, we played it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad we played it. I am glad we played it.
So yeah, 2040, an American Insurgency one of these days. I'll get it right. From Compass Games. Check it out if this is something that you're interested in. But appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander for PlayerSaid.com.
And I'm Grant.